Yo, yo. Hello, everybody. I'm back. So earlier today, we reviewed, actually, I don't even know if people can hear me. Test, test, 1, 2, 3, check. All right, it looks like my audio is working. Fingers crossed. Turn off my notifications because, oh my gosh, today I did not get OBS configured. I checked my email today. That was probably a bad idea. I have 8. So just today, I got 18 emails. I don't know. Every day is kind of like that. But I'm gonna try my best to figure out some time management and so that I can do things like this, review meta ethics videos. Oh, sorry, metaphysics videos. Okay, so earlier today we reviewed Sophie Felia's video on death and the consent argument, the deprivation account, according to, Benatar's views on that, and Sophie Felia's critique. Now, through that video, it felt like he was making some metaphysical assumptions or claims, and especially when it comes to persons. And this, well, I don't know what his criteria is to be considered a person. It seems like the ability to do some type of ethical rationalization. So I feel like that this video is important to understand his overall worldview. I'm pretty ignorant about metaphysics, so maybe I'll learn some things along the way. And yeah, let's get started.
All right, so let's continue our discussions on metaphysics. Today we have a very exciting lecture. The last lecture that we talked about was about ontological relations, identity, constitution, instantiation, characterization, exemplification, composition, and dependence. Today we're going to talk about persons, their ontology, or more specifically, more technically, psychology. That's what we're going to talk about today. We will look into their ontology, what kind of things they are, the powers that they might have, and the rest of the this series on metaphysics will be about persons. I wouldn't go that deep into different philosophies because, I mean, as we know, the concept of persons breaks down into multiple philosophies: philosophy of the mind, action, philosophy of their needs, language, and I don't want to get into all those troubles. Just scratch the surface on the metaphysical side of person. All right, so what do I mean by person? By person here, we're not talking about, because also in ethics the concept of person might come up, but here we're talking about in metaphysics about an ontological kind. So what do I mean by person? It's actually very simple to answer. I mean,
and going in with my certain bias is that there are certain animals that I would consider, some non-human animals, persons. If they are conscious beings, sentient beings that are subjects of a life, I would consider that a being who has a mental capability for subjective experience and have interests and preferences, and what happens to them matters to them, and I consider them like a moral subject or a moral patient. And yeah, that's how some of them, not all, but I haven't gone down the road of animal consciousness, but I think it's reasonable that some of the animals obviously have those types of capabilities, and I think the way we treat them ethically would follow from that.
You are a person, and I mean, that's it. It's very simple to identify it. I mean, in a sense that you point at something and then you say, "Oh, that's a dog." Uh, what is a person? I'm a person. You that you're listening to me right now, you're a person, and we want to understand what kind of thing you are. That's the entire thing. Um, but it might be interesting to have a certain description exactly of what are we. Someone asks, okay, what kind of thing are you? What do you do? What are a couple of your properties? If you want to describe a specific type of dog to someone, I mean, how do you describe it? Now we want to describe a person. So I'm asking you, for instance, what are you? And yeah, I mean, what kind of things you would want to say that they are a kind of hallmark of what you are, of what you experience? And there are a couple of things that I want to point out. I mean, there might be more than these, but these are the least the ones that I can clearly see in myself and in other persons. And the first one is that we are the subject of experience. I mean, right now, you are listening to me and you are the subject. I am talking and I am the subject of this talking. You're experiencing something, and if you ask who's experiencing that, you are experiencing that. So you are the subject of that experience. But we are more than that. We're not just experiencing things, we're also doing things. In that sense, we are agents of actions. So, for instance, it's not just that you're experiencing this talk, you also decided to do so. You clicked on the video. I decided I'm doing something here. I decided that I want to record this video, and you want to listen to it. So it's not just that we're observing; we're also acting. So we're also agents of our action. But also, it's not just that we're experiencing and we're acting, but it's also that we're asking, we're kind of aware.
Tom, hey Marcus, have you seen my latest video of me reading Chiron yet? Not yet. Sorry, I will after this. I had 18 emails to reply to today, and I just finished, and I didn't get time to configure OBS or get some, like, there's other things that I wanted to do today, but it's getting late. I'm still gonna try and do things. 18, damn, yeah, I know. I'll be honest, I did not handle it well. I saw my email, and so while I was answering an email, another email came in, and it's Saturday. It's Saturday, and a lot of these emails were from work. So I got to figure out some time management, and because that's just untenable. Like I can't. I don't know what to do exactly, but and the thing is, like, things get let things linger. They pressurize, and I'm just trying to knock down everything as possible. But it's like a never-ending barrage of things that keep happening, and I gotta deal with it. And I just want to, like, read and study on my downtime, but I'll get there. This is first world problems.
Aware of them, of ourselves, and we kind of ask ourselves, what should we do? So it's not just that we do things, but we also reflect on what we do. Like we ask, like, should I do this or should I not do this? Should I watch this video? Should I subscribe to this channel? Should I stop listening to it right now, or should I not? Right. So this is also something that we have, and the way that I want to capture that is by saying that we are the asker of the normative question. And by normative question, I exactly mean this: like, why should I do that? Like, why should I listen to this person? Why should I, again, watch this video? What's the better thing to do? You see, so it's not just that we do things, but we also think about it. Like, what's the better way? What's the best way to do it? Should we do it? Should we not do it?
So he's probably already thought about this, but like first, just as criteria of person, the asker of normative question of the normative question. So what I'm very curious about is how does he reconcile humans that cannot do these things? Does he classify them as non-humans? Or sorry, non-persons? He could bite the bullet on that. I don't know how he would reconcile that, but I guess that's essentially my only critique for now. I'm going to assume that he's going to address this, of course.
Why should I do it? So this is also something that we do. So again, we're talking about you and I, and we're interested in what kind of thing we are. And I'm listing a couple of like indicators of what we are, so we can talk about this. All right, so that's what I mean by a person. As I say, it's very simple. I'm just talking about you. So so now we get a little bit deeper. So the question is, we're trying to understand what are we, right? Now there are obviously two things when I point at you or I point at myself. There are clearly two things. One is, of course, you and I, the person is there. But there's also a human being here. And also when I point at you, I'm pretty sure there's another human being listening to me. So now the question is, what's the relation between them? So this is very similar to the question that we asked about the statue and the lump of clay. We said, okay, we all agree that there's a statue there. We also agree that there's a lump of clay there. And the question is, what's the relation between them? So as I said, so prima facie, there are two things here, and we're interested in the relation. Now, of course, the relation can be identity in a sense that the person and the human being, they're identical to each other. So we're not really talking about two things here. We're just talking about one thing, and that's animalism. We only have one substance here. Or it might be that the person and human, they're not identical to each other. And that's when we're talking about two things, literally. So we have substance dualism. So that's the main question, right? In the same sense that whether the statue is identical to the lump of clay, or do we have like two things over there, or do we only have one object over there? So it's the same thing here. Do we have one object here, or do we have two objects here? If they're identical, if I am identical to this body, then we obviously have one. If not, we will have two. The animalism position can itself be broken down into two subcategories, and that's because we as persons seem to have some properties that we can call mental properties, a kind of psychological states that we can be in. We can believe things, we can want things, we can intend to do things, we can will things. We can think about stuff, we can imagine stuff, we can feel pain, we can feel pleasure. So these are a kind of mental, psychological states that we are experiencing, in our consciousness. And then there's a question, okay, when I'm experiencing pain, or I'm experiencing pleasure, or I'm intending to do something, or I believe something, there's also something happening in the body of a human being, right? So now we have one substance, so we're the same thing, right? But when we look at ourselves, we seem to have two different properties. On the one side, we have this kind of mental, psychological states that we have. On the other side, when we look at the body, we see that the body also has these different states that it can be in. The body can be in the state of fear, the body can be in the state of anxiety, the body can be in the state of pleasure. And now the answer is, again, between these two states. Are they identical with each other? Or are we talking about two different?
Oh, I see Andrew made a comment. Hold on. want to address this because I did talk to Sophie Philia about moving someone out of existence. Mm. Of course, I can't pull it up now. Okay. Oh, that doesn't help. Okay, there we go. So, yeah, Andrew says, was wondering how the conversation between Sophie and you went. When I first watched his video, I stopped after he explained his moving doesn't mean killing thing by comparing it to a hospital that suddenly doesn't exist. It just made no real sense to me, and I was put off. Uh, I also put it on. So as soon as he said that, I put it on pause and I didn't watch the rest. So I sympathize with that. I wouldn't say I was put off. I was more curious because he's saying that this was his understanding of Benatar's axiological asymmetry. And the first two premises of his argument, he says, maps onto the um, the diagram of his asymmetry. I don't even know what to call it. So I think that's the way to look at it, is that if you look at Sophie Philia's first two premises, map it onto the first two on the left side of the end of that square. And if you just use his rhetoric to understand his asymmetry, that might that that might help. So by moving, I mean, this was trying to re-articulate his framing of this is going to be a challenge. So by moving, he's saying that if we consider a comparison between existence and non-existence, such as the hospital case, we are moving from the actual case and the not actual case, existence and non-existence. So we're moving from different states. I under, I mean, when I heard that, um, I probably had the same reaction you had, and I think it's due to some metaphysical, the way we're talking about moving from existence or moving to these comparative states or the counterfactual. When comparing to a counterfactual, I don't consider that a moving, but I think that um, this is just a choice in rhetoric, not in substance. I think he's just communicating in rhetorically the way that he understands the axiological asymmetry, but it still maps onto, like, he still understands it the same way that using Benatar's language that you would. I may have butchered his explanation, but this was from what our conversation. I probably should have just had him on the channel, and then everybody would know. Sophie Philia, if you're down for a conversation on the channel, I'm down for that. We can have the conversation, hash out some of these things, and that way I'm not. we're not playing a game of telephone where I'm telling other people about your argument. And I just think it would help, but we could do like a recorded thing or a live thing. Up to you. The offer's there. I understand time is, we're all busy, but anyways, Andrew, I hope that sort of gave some explanation. And if not, I'm sorry. Let's get back to the video now. And thank you for the comment, by the way. All right. I think we're back.
States or not. If you assume that they are identical to each other, that's physicalism, because basically what we're saying is that this is what we are, nothing more. This is just this body. All the states that we feel, they're just states of the brain. That's it. There's nothing above that. That's all there is, and that's why it's called physicalism. But if someone claims that no, actually, the feeling, for instance, that you have of the pain is not identical to the states that your brain is, to that, the pattern of neurological activity, that's one thing. The feeling that you have of the pain is a different thing. They're not identical to each other. And that's what we call the property dualism, that the properties that we have two types of properties. We have this kind of mental properties, and then we have this kind of physical properties, and they're not identical to each other. So the question is, what is, again, the relation between these two? And this can be broken down again into whether the mental properties are completely independent of the physical properties, in a sense that there's a concept relation called the supervenience that we try to explain it using the relation with physical and mental. We use supervenience. And supervenience is a relation that's very similar to constitution, in a sense that it's an asymmetric relation very close to identity. So when we say that A supervenes upon B, what we mean basically is that that A is not completely independent of B, but it's not identical to it either. You cannot change A unless you change B, in a sense that if you fix B, then A is also fixed. Like we have seen something similar to this kind of relation in the relation of constitution. Like imagine the statue and the lump of clay. If you want to change anything about the statue, you have to change the clay that constitutes it. Like think about it. Like if you want to change its position, you have to change the position of the lump of matter. If you want to change its shape, you have to change the shape of that. If anything is going to change on the statue, you have to change something about the lump of matter. But the relation is not symmetric, so you can change the matter, but the statue remains the same. That we know from the analysis that we did. So it's that kind of supervenience, is that kind of relation that we're talking about. That so for one position, which we call weak emergence, is that these mental states that we have, they supervene upon the physical. So in a sense that if you fix the physical states, then you cannot change the mental. So the mental is not something completely separate from the physical. It's like a projection of those physical thing, but the projection is not identical to that thing that's projecting. And the other position is a strong emergence. That's when we say that no, the mental states, the mental properties that we have, they are completely independent. They're not. They're completely different properties. Like you can think about it, like imagine. Like think about your hair and the length of your hair and the color of your hair. They're completely independent of each other, in the sense that you can fix one of them, but you can change the other one, right? You can have the same color hair, but long or short, or you can have the same length, short, but different colors. So in a sense that they are something beyond and above the physical properties that we have. So we are in this kind of strong emergent sense, we are this kind of physical one substance here, the human body, which has developed this kind of new properties also for whatever reason. But we also have this kind of new properties that we call these mental properties, and that's what we call the strong emergence. Now, in the in the camp of substance dualism, we need to make a distinction between two different types, and one is the Cartesian, the most famous one, dualism, and the other one is non-Cartesian. For the Cartesian dualism, from Descartes, the idea is that these two substances that we have, the properties of mental and physical, are completely distinct from each other, in the sense that the substance that has the mental properties doesn't have any kind of physical properties, and the substance that has physical properties doesn't have any kind of mental properties. So they're completely distinguished from each other. Now, in that sense, that's we have this kind of two substances that they don't overlap in any way, and that's what we call the Cartesian dualism. So in that sense, we would be, the person would be, because that's the thinking substance, that substance would not be a physical one. It would be like a ghost, and then you have this kind of physical thing like a machine. This machine is not thinking, the other thing is only thinking. You combine them, you get what we are. And then we also have non-Cartesian dualism that doesn't agree with Descartes, that we have to separate these two substances like that. And we can actually claim that person is physical. So in a sense that the person is not identical to the human being, so it's a different entity. We have two things here. But still, the person does have physical properties, does have extension space, does have location. In that sense, it does have physical properties. So that's what we call non-Cartesian dualism, and that's the position that I will be defending here. So to defend the dualism, what I will do is we attack animalism. Because if we attack animalism or monism, we establish substance dualism. And if you put aside Cartesian dualism, which is usually done, I mean, at least I won't go into details of that one. We're just assuming that we don't have good arguments why that kind of separation should happen. So if we refute animalism, what we get is non-Cartesian dualism. All right, so we want to argue that the view that we are identical to the human organism is false. And the way that we would argue it is like this. It's very similar to what we had for the statue and the clay. So we say, okay, for reductio, that's what we want to prove. That's false. For reductio, suppose that I star, and by I star, I mean you. I mean the person. I don't use I because I is the pronoun. I use I star, meaning what the pronoun points at. So when you say I, that's the subject of experience, that's the agent of the action, and that's the asker of the normative question. So I'll just use I star. Suppose that I star, I don't know whose notation this was. Lim Baker, maybe, I'm not sure. Suppose I star am identical to the human being that's my body, right? So that's the animalism position. That's premise one. Premise two, it's metaphysically possible that an animal kind exists that lacks I star. That's premise two. It's metaphysically possible that there is an animal, that a natural animal kind exists that lacks I star. Call it A. That animal kind. Premise three is metaphysically possible for the human being to become an A. Premise four, from 2 and 3, that there is possible for an animal kind that lacks I star, A, and it's metaphysically possible for the human being to become A. From 2 and 3 follows that it is metaphysically possible for the human being to exist without I star, right? Because that A doesn't have I star, and it's metaphysically possible for the human being to become an A, and therefore it's metaphysically possible for the human being to exist without I star. But from 1 and 4, it follows that it's metaphysically possible for I star to exist without I star, because premise 1 says that I star is identical to the human being. So if the human being can exist without the I star can exist without the I star. But that's impossible.
John Lavelle. Humanity can turn the tide on man-made climate change, and Trump is not going to help. That's exactly what Sophophilia was talking about. Kudos, John. I appreciate you. I wish you well. Okay.
Right? I cannot exist without I. So if we get to that absurd position 5, it follows that 1, 2, and 3 cannot be true at the same time. Now 4 and 5, they're just conclusions from 1, 2, and 3. So if you assume that the argument is valid, 1 or 2 or 3, one of them has to.
John Lavelle writes, I am delusional. I am sorry to hear that. And good luck with that.
To go. If 1 goes, that's animalism. So to defend our position, we need to make sure that 2 and 3 are true. So we'll look at one by one. So the first one is that it's metaphysically possible. This is the easier one. Metaphysically possible for a human being to become an A. Now, if you remember, you can go back to the video on science versus metaphysics, where I talk about this. And there we looked at the example of a caterpillar changing into a butterfly. And then we explained there that the metaphysical possibility of change, not the natural possibility, but metaphysical possibility is governed by the ontological kind, by the ontological laws governing that kind of thing. And those ontological kinds come from the ontological category that thing belongs to. And there we looked at living beings, basically, not even humans, but more generally living beings. And we said that they all belong to the same ontological category of living beings because it's the identity or persisting condition of living beings seems to be their life. And the reason that a caterpillar can turn into a butterfly from one natural kind can change to another natural kind is because that change is metaphysically possible. And it is metaphysically possible because caterpillar and butterfly, they both are living beings. We have the same life. It's the same caterpillar life changing into butterfly. So if A is an animal, is a living being, and human being is also an animal, a living being, so it follows from our discussions that if they're from the same ontological category, then it's metaphysically possible for a human being to become an A. So if anyone wants to challenge this idea, this means that a human being is from a different ontological category from animal A, because otherwise it would be metaphysically possible for them to change. But as I explained, prima facie, animals are all from the same ontological category of living beings, and that's why a caterpillar can change into a butterfly. So if anyone wants to claim that it's metaphysically impossible for a human being to become an A, they are claiming that human beings and A, they belong, even though they both are animals, they belong to a different ontological categories. So they have to come up with an explanation. What are the ontological categories of human beings and A? Because they have to be from different ontological categories. And it seems difficult because all we know about these two things are that they're alive, you know? So that's a challenge for anyone who wants to challenge this premise. And we believe that would be difficult to answer this question. What would be the ontological category? What would be the persistent conditions of A and human beings, and why that shows that we belong to different ontological categories? It seems that it's only life, and that gives us this premise. The more controversial one may be it's that it's metaphysically possible that an animal exists that lacks eye star. And note that this argument doesn't have to revolve around animal. As I said, we can just talk about living beings in general. So if someone wants to refute this claim, what they are claiming basically is that it's metaphysically impossible that an animal exists that lacks eye star. And notice that what's eye star? Eye star is the subject of experience, is an agent of action, is the asker of the normative question. That's what we are, right? And it might be that there are other psychological substances other than persons that we are interested right now, but we are only looking at this now. So as I said, I star, I mean you and I. I don't care about the other types. We're talking about you and I. That's the one that we're talking about. And you and I, we are the subject of experience. We are the agent of our action, and we are the asker of the normative question. So the claim is it metaphysically possible that an animal kind, any animal, exists that lacks I star? So if anyone wants to say that this is false, what they're claiming is that it's metaphysically impossible. Like it just follows kind of, we wouldn't follow, it would be metaphysically necessary if you say that something is an animal, that it has an I star. So this means that it follows from being an animal that it has an I star. But this is unlikely, as there is nothing in the nature of being alive, that's what we mean by an animal, that makes it metaphysically necessary to have an I star. So I tell you that, hey, that's an animal, and then you say, okay, then that thing asks the normative question. Like I still haven't told you, is it a worm?
Sepazuzu writes, "Hey Marcus, what's up?" Hello, Sepazuzu. Not much. How are you? I am just reviewing Sophiphilia's video lecture on substance dualism and persons, because in his last video he talked about persons, and I don't know the difference between non-human persons and human persons under his criteria of personhood. So figured that this was important. Sentient Boy, I think I need to watch their previous video they mentioned. Yeah, when he referenced that other video, I'm like, how down the rabbit hole of self-references do I have to go down to understand his worldview? I think I'm going to stop at the personhood thing. And I might only be able to get through half of this. Because I'm not too sure I understand or agree with this current argument about dismantling monism. I'm skeptical of this I concept, and I'd want to drill down into that, into what that means better. Yes, 100% agree, and ditto. This, John. Hey, John, if you don't like this, you can just leave. You know, you can just close the tab, go to another video that you'll enjoy. Sepazuzu, okay. Yeah, I think you have to tackle metaphysics in order to understand his antinatalism. Yes. So.
Is it what kind of animal is it? You said doesn't matter. Is it alive?
Just saying. Yes, you are just saying. And I'm just saying as well. Let's see here. Because this is relevant, right? What is in my basket of things that exist is not in the basket of other people. So thank you for that.
If it's alive, then it asks the normative question. It's an agent. It's the subject of experience.
It is my philosophy. Cool. That's great.
That might be a bit of a stretch. So if someone wants to basically reject this claim, they have to explain what is it in being an animal that makes it metaphysically necessary to have an I star. Notice that some people might even claim that some animals might not even be sentient. You know, they don't even feel pain, or they're not.
Yes, that was. Does anybody say that now? Does anybody really say that now? Like, yeah, it's in the history, but like, we don't see them as automata.
Even sob.
I don't actually know. Maybe there are people that say that.
Objects of experience. They might not even have consciousness. You know, let alone asking the normative question, like, does it a worm ask? should I do this? Should I not do this? Or even worse than that, we can go to plants, because as I said, the argument can be extended even to living beings in general.
I'm going to see the Nephilism 2.0. Oh, John has a. You do not have to be on Earth to be an animal anymore. Right. We can go to another planet. Yep.
I didn't present it the most, the strongest form that it can have. So if someone wants to reject this premise, they have to explain what is it in being an
There are animals in space. That's cool.
animal that makes it metaphysically necessary, metaphysically necessary to have an eye star. And we believe that that's also difficult to answer. So if we believe that these two premises are very difficult to refute, in a sense that from the previous one, we don't want to say that animals are divided into different ontological categories, and then we have to come up with different persistent conditions for these different animals specifically, since we haven't talked about A that much. That's difficult. The other one basically makes a claim that every animal is a person, in a sense that they are the subject of.
I don't know if I would group it that way, but I think it's not controversial to say that at least some animals are they have subjective experiences. I don't think that's controversial.
Experience, agent of action, and asker of the normative question. So what remains, if these two are difficult to refute, then what remains is the first premise, and that's what we want to refute. That's the animalism, that I star am identical to human being. That's my body. So if what I've said so far works for you, then that means that animalism is false and substance dualism is true. Furthermore, since a human being can exist without I star, notice that this premise 4, follows from premise 2 and 3. It doesn't need premise 1. And premise 4 says that is a conclusion. It says that it's metaphysically possible for the human being to exist without I star. So since a human being can exist without I star while I star cannot, therefore I star and a human being have different persistent conditions. And therefore persons and humans, or any part of humans, I will come back to this, are from different ontological categories. Again, the same thing with the statue and the lump of clay that we had. We showed a change that one of them can persist, the other one cannot. And then we say if they were identical, they should have both persisted through that change. But if it's
Oh, I wonder if this is going to hint at differentiating between non-human persons and, well, wait a minute. So being able to become I-star would differentiate between a different ontological category?
that's not the case, therefore they have different persistent conditions, and persistent conditions are coming from the ontological categories, so they have different ontological categories. So basically, what this argument shows, that animalism, to say that we are identical to our human body, is a category mistake. We're completely different categories. In the same sense, if someone says this statue is identical to the lump of clay, is a category error. So that's substance dualism, right? You and I, we are one substance. We're not identical to our human body. And also note that I said to humans or any proper part of humans, because again, the argument is very flexible. So if you say, okay, I don't mean like I'm not identical to my body, but I'm identical to my heart and brain, or I'm identical to my nervous system, for instance. Well, again, you can just redo the argument for the nervous system. The nervous system has to be alive, so it will be again a living being. It will have a life, and then you can run the same argument. The nervous system.
What is metaphysical? Let's Google it. A branch of philosophy that deals with, well, at least metaphysics, the branch of philosophy that deals with the first principles of things, including abstract concepts such as being, knowing, substance, cause, identity, time, and space. It examines the basic structures of reality. The Bible addresses spells and magic. It sure does.
Can change metaphysically possible to become an A. I star cannot become an A, and the same argument applies. Of course, no one wants to claim that I am a dead part of the humans, because again, the same argument can be applied, and it would be much easier to refute the other premises and get to the falsehood of animalism. So yeah, that's for the animalism. So here we
sound kind of messed up for me. One sec. Let's try this again.
we go. So this is our argument for why we are a separate entity from a different ontological category. Now, that in itself is interesting, but why is it that we say that we're not talking about Cartesian dualism? So what are we? We are instances of an ontological kind person. Okay, now we don't have a name for it, but we just call it person, the ontological kind person, which, as we said, we is known by being, we're talking about you and I. So we're talking about being subjects of experience, agents of actions, and askers of the normative question. I'm asking, is this the best way to explain this idea? I mean, I could have done better. I'm experiencing this, and I'm doing these things. I can raise.
So I don't know if this is his answer, because I can still grant these things and say that there are humans without the criteria of agents of actions and askers of the normative question. But I'm wondering if he says that, well, they can become those things, and if that's his answer. Because we, by virtue of being constituted by a physical organism, I don't know.
Raise my arm, and I can ask, should I raise my arm? Should I raise left, right? That's what I am, and that's what you are. We are persons, and as we explained, we're not identical to our body. And so the question now comes up, based on the ontological relations that we learned: what is the relation between the person and the human organism? It's not identity, as we proved that animalism is false. What we are suggesting is constitution. Now, not everyone agrees with that. E.J. Lowe doesn't agree with that. But Lowe seems to be motivated by mereological concerns. But it wasn't the last video, I guess, that I talked about anatomically simple parts, and I gave a history about this problem of constitution and mereological and classical mereology. But as I said, I'm also follow Lynn Baker here, who also believes that the relation is constitution. I don't see any problem with it, so I'm just going to go with constitution. Lowe suggests a new kind of ontological relation called embodiments. That's different from constitution. But for now, it's fine. So basically, the relation is very similar to the statue and the lump of clay, in the same sense that the statue is not identical to the lump of clay, but is constituted by the lump of clay. What we are claiming here is that we are not identical to our human body, to the human organism. You see, so we have an animal, but we are constituted by that animal. It's a very fascinating idea. So, like, we are a separate entity, but we are constituted by our human body. And in the same sense that, if you remember, the constitution was very similar to identity. It was in a virtue of, receiving some properties in the virtue of being constituted. So the statue receives some physical properties, the location, the weight, the height, the extension, by the virtue of being constituted by a lump of clay. So in the same sense, we are also receiving physical properties by the virtue of being constituted by a physical organism. I mean, we're constituted by an animal, and that animal is physical, so we are physical. See, this is contra Descartes in Cartesian dualism that says that we don't have extension, but we do have extension. I mean, I have a height, I have a weight, I have a position, uh, and I also have all these properties that this animal has. The animal has a certain height, he has a certain amount of energy, he has a certain way of perceiving.
Okay, John. John says he has a soul. John says he is a creative animal. John says he is very superstitious. John says he is a shaman. Thank you for your commentary, John. Appreciate it.
Perceiving the world, of feeling the pain, and I'm also getting all of these properties from this animal that's constituting me. So that's a very, for me, that's a very interesting conclusion. It's not the normal way of thinking. I mean, we do have this kind of common way of talking about my body. You see, so we don't say like I am. Like, it's not. We don't see ourselves identical. We usually call it our body. It's my body, and so it's like.
John says you are welcome. Cheers. So what they do is give you the property.
We do have this kind of common way of talking about my body. You see, so we don't say like I am. Like, it's not. We don't see ourselves identical. We usually call it our body. It's my body, and so it's like the hand of my body, or my hand is something's happening to it. So all our metaphysical speculations here basically tries to show that that's a very apt way of talking about the human being. That is our body. We are not a human being. Like, technically, we are constituted by it. But there's actually a much more interesting, and this is much more controversial, but the argument, I believe, is a very good one. That it's not just that we are separated from the body, not separate.
Sentient Soy says, this is interesting. I'd lean more towards the idea that the statue is the clay, just statue shaped. Interesting.
I mean, we're not identical to the body, but we are actually a simple entity. And this is where we share the same thought with, not the same thought, but the same conclusion with.
Perhaps. It is not interesting. If you don't find it interesting, why are you here, John? Genuine question.
With Cartesian dualism. So Descartes also believed that we are metaphysically simple for different reasons. But we also believe that.
When asked why is he here on a video that he finds not interesting, he responds, I am delusional. That is an answer.
Even though we believe that we are physical entities, we still believe that we are metaphysically simple. This is also a very interesting idea. So what is a
no worries.
Metaphysical simple thing? A metaphysical composite thing is something that has proper parts. So a metaphysically simple entity is an object that.
It is a truth. Yeah, man. I mean, hey, I'm not forcing you to leave or stay. You do you. You do you.
Doesn't have any proper parts. So what we want to prove is that we, I mean by we, I mean you and I as a person. I don't mean the human being. We as persons, we do not have any proper parts. So the argument goes like this: for reductio, we have proper parts. Premise 2, which I will go back and explain a little bit more on this later, we do not have any proper part that is not part of the body. We're going to use mereology here. Okay, so premise 1, for reductio, we have proper parts. That's what we want to refute. Premise 2, we do not have any proper part that is not part of the body. Premise 3, by 2 and weak supplementation principle, if you remember, weak supplementation principle says that if
Zuzu says, I think in terms of metaphysis, I'm somewhere between pluralism and monism.
If X is a proper part of another object, then there must exist some other part of Y disjoint from X. Some believe that's the meaning of proper part. When we say improper part means identical, but proper part means a part that is not identical. So it means that there is something missing. So there is a part of that original one that is disjoint from that proper part. That's called the weak supplementation principle. So if we do not have any proper part that is not part of the body, then it means that our body cannot be a proper part of us, right? Because if body were a proper part of us, then we should have, by weak supplementation principle, a proper part that is disjoint from the body. But we don't have that by premise 2. So by 2 and weak supplementation principle, we get the conclusion that our body cannot be a proper part of us, right? So premise 4 says that, okay, by 2 and 3, we can conclude that all our proper parts are proper parts of body, right? Because remember that 2 says that we don't have any proper part that is not a part of the body, and part can be improper or can be proper. Premise 3 says improper doesn't work. Improper means our body itself. So what remains is just proper parts. So 2 says we don't have any proper part that is not a proper part of body, or 4 in another way says that all our proper parts are proper parts of body. Now by 4 and weak extensional principle says that an object, if 2 composite objects are identical if and only if they have exactly the same proper parts. So if all our proper parts are proper parts of...
John says, you guys have fun with this. Bye. Goodbye, John. Have a good rest of your Saturday. Take care.
Body. Then either they're identical, we either have the same proper parts, or we have the same proper parts of a proper part of the body, right? If all my proper parts are also inside body as a proper part, then either that's the whole body, which means that I have the same...
I'm so sorry for that horrible typo. Metaphysics. Gotcha.
proper parts as the body, or it will be a smaller part of the body, which would mean that I have the same proper parts as a proper part of the body. But by 4 and weak extensional, this means that we are either identical to our body or a proper part of it, right? If you have the weak extensional principle says that if you have 2 things, composite things, they have the same proper parts, they must be identical to each other. So this means that we are either identical to our body or a proper part of it. But this is animalism, and we have refuted that. So 6 says that we are not identical to our body or a proper part of it. That's the falsity of animalism. So that's a contradiction that we got, 5 and 6. That's a contradiction, and therefore we do not have proper...
Tyler's in the house. Hi, Tyler.
Parts. That's the reductio 1 that has to go. Now note that this argument is a very good argument because 3, 4, 5, and 6 we have defended before, and 7 is our conclusion, and 1 is the reductio. So there's only one premise left, that if we defend it, then the conclusion follows. And that's that we do not have any proper part that is not a part of body. And the way that we want to defend this premise is the way that David Hume defends. I mean, when we're talking about the natural laws, we talked about how David Hume was using this kind of principle of proving a negative, in the sense that you don't have to go uh, or make very long reasoning. Just give us one example of refutation, and that would be enough. So we want to defend that we don't have any proper part that is not part of our body. So if someone wants to refute this claim, they just have to give one example. If you say, no, I don't agree with that, we do have proper parts that is not part of the body, we will say, okay, what? So that's what we're saying here. That's what we're asking the one who wants to deny premise 2. What are some of the proper parts that we can have that is not part of our body? So if someone says, okay, I have hands, I have legs, eyes, kidneys, okay, that's not helpful because those are the part of the body, right? The premise 2 says that we don't have any proper part that is not part of the body. So that doesn't work. What else? Our experiences, like sadness, anger, pain, what we're seeing, what about those? And the question is, what are these things? Before we can talk about them, what are sadness and pain and anger and these experiences that we have? What kind of things are they? What is their ontology? Now, we learned about ontology in the beginning, about objects. So we can go step by step and analyze them. So first of all, there are concrete things, right? Sadness and pain, like they happen to you at a certain point in time. They are concrete things, right? They're not abstract. So they're particular, because only particulars are concrete. Universals, they were abstract. So if they're particular, they can only have two options. We have only two options for particulars. They're either objects or modes. In other words, they either have a determined identity condition or they don't. If they do have, then they're
Vegan Euclarium aliens.
Objects. If they don't have, they're modes. They're not really objects. There are the ways that objects are. In the particular world that we're living in, you look around, all you see are objects. There's nothing more than that. Objects and the way that those objects are. And the way those objects are, their color, the shape, their form, that's modes, right? So if sadness and pain, these are concrete stuff, they're particular. So are they objects or are they modes? Okay, we can look at it and think about your pain and my pain. I have a headache. Can you have the pain that I am experiencing right now? No. Why? Because if you experience what I am experiencing, look, I'm not saying that similar pain. I'm saying because these are particular pains, this particular pain that I'm having, can you have this particular pain? And the answer is no, because if you are having this particular pain, then what you are having is not what I am feeling, it's what you are feeling. You see what I mean? So the moment that you feel something, that would be your pain. It wouldn't be my pain. It seems that it's not possible for me to give you my pain in the same sense that it's not possible for a crystal ball to give its sphericity to something else. And the problem is that the identity of pain depends on the identity of me. Because we're talking about experiences. And I, as the person, am the subject of that experience. And that experience is defined. Its identity depends on the identity of me. Whose pain are we talking about? My pain. There cannot be any pain that I am experiencing without I. There cannot be any color that I am seeing without I. Is that clear? So what this shows is basically that our experiences or pain or anger, these are not objects, these are modes. These are the modes that I as a person can be in. And from ontological relations, we know that when something depends for its identity on something else, it also depends for its existence. So if I don't exist, then the experience of the color that I have also cannot exist independent of me. In the same sense that if you destroy a ball, the sphericity of that ball cannot exist independent of that ball. It cannot float free of it and then attach to something else. And also in the same sense that when we have like that crystal ball that we had, and then you heat it up.
I like how this is under the category of simplicity. I mean, I understand what he's saying, but uh, I, I don't know where he's going with this.
And then it loses that sphericity and it becomes into a new mode of being. In the same sense, you might be happy, and that's a way that you are, that's a mode that you're in, and we can heat up the room so much that you will stop being happy. You lose that mode, and then you will take on a new mode of being. You become angry, you become agitated, it's too hot for you. So it seems that these feelings, these are not objects, they are modes. But if they're modes, they cannot be proper parts. Why? Because suppose that modes are proper parts of persons. Now,
oh, oh boy. Suppose modes are proper parts of persons due to two persons.
we want to apply weak extensional principle to two persons, and we want to see if they are identical or not. So due to weak extensional principle, two persons with the same proper parts are identical, right? But the problem is, so I ask, are those two people identical? And then you say, okay, let's check with weak, they are composite, right? Weak extensional principle says that they are identical if and only if they have the same proper parts. But the problem is that to judge the identity of two modes, if they are proper parts, we need to suppose the identity of persons, right? So you get a pain from there, you get a pain from here, and then you want to say, okay, that's a proper part, that's a proper part. Are they identical with each other? But to answer that question, you need to know, because you would say, okay, this is the pain of A, this is the pain of B. Are they identical? But to answer that, you have to know first, is A identical to B? Are they the same person? Are they the experience of the heat of the same person? That's important, because if they're not, then they're not identical to each other. You see, that's why the modes cannot be proper parts, because modes depend for their identity on their object. So they cannot make the object, because if they make the object, then the identity of the object would in turn depend on the identity of the proper parts by weak extensional principle. And the identity of the part would depend on the identity of the object. To see why this is weird, imagine that you want to make a table, and then you have all those different pieces. You have like 1,000 of legs and different pieces of wood, and then you want to make a table. And then you tell someone, hey, go bring the 4 legs of this table. And then they say, okay, you just mean like just any four legs. You say, no, not any 4 legs, the legs of this table. And then you say, okay, which table? And then you say, okay, the table that we will make by those 4 legs. But then you say, okay, then I cannot bring those, because I don't know the identity of this table until I bring those 4 legs. Those 4 legs will define the identity of the table, because if I use those 4 legs and another 4 legs, that would be 2 different tables. The identity of the tables depend on the legs that I bring, and now you're telling me that the identity of the legs that I bring depend on the table. That doesn't make any sense. So modes cannot be a proper part of persons or proper parts of anything. This is in contrast with trope theorists who believe that an object is nothing but a bundle of tropes. And in this metaphysics, that's just nonsense. You cannot have that. The identity will become a problem. Okay, so what's left? I mean, think about yourself as a person. if I ask you, what are some of your parts? I mean, you will either tell all these things about your modes, your experiences, your feelings, your memories, whatever, or whatever you're telling me will be a part of the body. So if someone wants to claim that premise is false, okay, then come on. I mean, just say something. Tell us an example of a proper part that is not proper part of the body, or is not a mode, or is not a mode of the body. But it seems that we don't have anyone. So by defending premise 2, what remains is premise 1, which is false, and that's the you know our having proper parts. So the conclusion is that we are metaphysically simple entities. It's again a this is even stranger than substance dualism. I mean, substance dualism, okay, you can get it, and especially because it's also the same conclusion that Cartesian dualism gets, and it's a kind of strange thing. I mean, we do have metaphysically simple things, even in physics. I mean, in the end, you will have some atoms, not physical atoms, but in the end, you should have some physical things that are simple. That you just cannot break those things down anymore. So we must have some kind of metaphysical simple. And it seems that, but to say that we are a metaphysically simple, that's a completely different way of thinking. That I am a metaphysically simple thing. And that's one of the reasons that people like Lowe don't like to use constitution, because they believe when something is constituted by something else, they will also get the proper parts by virtue of being constituted by something else. So they would say that a statue gains all the proper parts of the lump of clay by the virtue of being constituted by it, and we would get the proper parts of our body if we were constituted by the body by virtue of being constituted. But as I explained in the last video, I'm not sure if that's the only way of solving the puzzles. So what are we? That was the person, right? We are simple entities, metaphysically simple entities constituted by our bodies. What are the consequences of this view? So we are a particular object of a natural kind. We're also a natural kind and an ontological kind person. I don't know, we're calling it the same thing. We don't have any other name, but we will call it natural kind and ontological kind, both a person. We are particular objects, you and I, are not identical to the human being, which basically means that we are natural, we are a physical entity, we have physical properties by our body by virtue of being constituted by our bodies, but we also have our own natural laws. We have our own powers. We exemplify things dispositionally, and we exemplify things currently. And that's an interesting idea, right? That we can investigate persons or psyches in a kind of psychology, if you want to call that science. What kind of natural law controls us? What kind of powers do we have? And in the next videos, we will look into some of the powers that we have and defend a couple of objections that can be applied to it.
Our bodily biology is more or less the same. His headache wouldn't be all that different from mine, biologically speaking. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, how would we have mutual understanding of what a headache is? And I think he was just talking about objection to one of his premises, I think the second one, about if it's a mode and or if it's going to be not a property. Yes, property, not, no. I don't even know now. Stop sharing. I have more questions than answers. Thank you for joining me. And thank you for giving me some food for thought, Sophophilia. You definitely got my brain going. I thought this would have had everything in it, but it looks like he's going to create some more videos about his metaphysics or his views on metaphysics. I still don't understand marginal humans or marginal cases, how he would object to that. Or do any of you know how he would object to that? Happy to hurt my I mean, yeah. That's why I like philosophy. It's especially areas that I don't understand. That's where I have the most fun. And this is an area that I do not understand. So I just like learning new things. And I'm wary of just given his video on antinatalism. It's not my understanding of antinatalism, at least in his rhetoric. So, this is kind of like I'm going to do my own reading on this particular topic. I don't necessarily have any serious disagreements, but again, I watched this video to better understand his other video on death, animals, and veganism. And I still don't understand why he does not include animals. So, wonder what he meant by not physical atoms. Spiritual atoms? I don't remember what part that was. All right. Well, I don't know if I want to, if I should go down, because he referenced another video that he made that might offer some more information to this video. Maybe another time. It's getting late. I need to get some things done. All right. I'm going to end this stream. Thank you, everybody, who joined, keeping me company while I grapple with Sophophilia's metaphysics and his articulation on antinatalism. I mean, he brought up a good point about being reborn into existence. I thought that was an interesting puzzle, but I mean, practically, we're not going to be brought back, man. Maybe he thinks that. I don't know. And then what was the other thing? Being brought back into existence could, there would be a problem with the deprivation account if that's, or antinatalism in conjunction with deprivationism. But there was another thing that I took away from his first video, and now I forgot. It was literally this morning that I watched it. What the hell? Oh, well. Adios, folks. Adios, sentient soy. Yeah, I hope everybody has a good rest of their Saturday. And I'll catch you next time. I'm hoping to get OBS configured and just more hangout streams. Honestly, I don't really have any big plans, but just get the ball rolling again on streaming. So again, thank you for this. And Sophophilia, if you want to have a conversation, hit me up. Because I definitely have, I don't even know if I have any questions. I feel a little bit more perplexed about your position than I did before. And the first, this video, I don't think it informs me fully about your first video that I like, the antinatalism one. So I still have questions about that. Anyway, we will continue push forward, and till next time. All right. I don't know why I'm lingering. Let's we shall head out. Have a good day, everyone. Cheers.